Monsters, creatures, legends. You know them. You slay them. But do you ever get to play them? Sure, defeating a giant in single combat, solving a sphinx's riddle, or even outwitting a devil is a lot of fun. But what if you were the giant, sphinx, or devil? What if you could become the monster? Well, now you can. Continuing the tradition of Year of Monsters, Roll for Combat is proud to present the Year of Legends. Every month, you'll receive a new legendary creature that you can play as a character for either 5e or Pathfinder. Now you too can play as a fallen angel, a stony gargoyle, a brain-eating seraphage, an ocular evil eye, a towering giant, a teeming swarmblood, a moon-blessed were-creature, a tree-like arboreal, a miraculous golemborn, an accursed lamia, an ominous psychopomp, or a riddling sphinx. You can get all this for less than a cup of coffee every month. But don't delay. If you back the Year of Legends Kickstarter now, you'll receive Devils, a bonus 13th ancestry at the start of the new year. These infernal creatures from hell are the perfect complement to January's other ancestry, Angels. If you back the Kickstarter today, you'll receive both Devils and Angels to kick off 2024. Otherwise, you'll have to wait until 2025 for the Devils to appear. So, won't you give monster characters a chance? Back the Year of Legends today.
Oh, look at that. Derik is dancing and everything.
I'm excited.
You are excited.
Always.
Excited for the Cleric.
So we're going to go right into it because yesterday with the Bard, we felt bad because we spent all this time, Grady spent all this time looking at the Bard, seeing all the changes, and there was like no changes or very few. Today we went through the changes, and the Cleric is infinite changes. The number of changes.
Not quite infinite, but there's a lot.
Infinite.
It's a lot.
The stream will never end. Welcome to the stream that never ends.
But on the other hand, it's ending because there's a 5 o'clock stream afterwards that Steven's on.
There's going to be an ending because at 5 o'clock, myself and Professor Dungeon Master are going to go through, is Hasbro possibly going to go bankrupt in the near future? The answer might surprise you.
Wow, it's like you're seeing the clickbait thumbnail in person. It's like a video clickbait.
You know what?
It's Steven. Steven is the incarnation of like getting you in with his enthusiasm to do something. So he's like wait, should we make a living clickbait that's like a mind element based creature?
Focus.
We got to get going. And by the way, I saw this long video with Mr. Beast going through how and why clickbait works. And if I'm going to believe anyone, it's Mr. Beast.
Was that the one that was actually done by Mark Roper or Destin?
I don't know.
And he did it with Mark, Mr. Beast?
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
Or Derik from Very.
Yeah.
Focus.
I know, but it was really interesting.
No, it's really interesting.
So anyhow, the answer might surprise you. And believe it or not, there's a very good chance that they will go out of business. It's something like professional estimates I looked are like 29% they can go bankrupt, so that's not zero. Anyhow, I'm going to go through this in detail after the stream tonight at 5 live. So with that, let's get through stuff real quick. Today we're doing the Cleric. Yesterday we did the Bard. 2 days ago we did the Master. That was with No Nat. Yesterday was with Grady. I'm like losing my mind. Today we're doing with Derik. Tomorrow we got Linda Zayas Palmer, and we're doing the Druid and the Leshy. And then Fighter. I don't think we have anyone for Fighter, but we'll find.
No, we do. We have Jess.
Oh, Jess. Jess is doing Fighter with us, and we're going to do the Dandy Fighter in Derik's honor.
I like that archetype.
I think the one we don't have anyone for is the Ranger.
And
then we have someone from Foundry for Rogue, and we have Jess again for Witch, and we have Anto from Icarus Games for Wizard.
Right.
And then Rules Lawyer for GM Core.
That's right. Rules Lawyer. Ronald himself is going to be here. So that is the schedule. Next is we're going to try to take questions, but we have so much to go through that I don't know if we're going to get to all of them, but if you super chat, we'll try to get to them. I guarantee you we're probably not going to get to any questions unless it happens to be during our talks. If you gave us
or super chat.
Yeah, well, super chats we'll get to. We'll try very, very hard. We'll get to those. And then finally, subscribe, like, all that YouTube jazz. Turn on the notifications because we're doing a lot. But we, of course, have... Whoops, what was that? Oh, my God, I accidentally copied and pasted the universe away. You guys won't see. You'll see it happen on the...
Oh, no.
Don't worry about it. It's no big
deal. Universe...
we don't need the universe. What's the big deal?
Did you make a box containing another universe by accident?
Yes, and I actually pasted it on top of OBS, so we disappeared for a second. Do you see these animated tokens on the screen right now? Brand new! Look at those things. They're amazing. We're going to have animated tokens for everything. These came in, too. Brand new.
I'm not going to lie. These look pretty great. So this is the first time I'm seeing them, and you know what? They look really cool.
Yes.
I like that sort of puppet warp style. That sort of, I don't know how to call it. It's like a parallax kind of animation.
Parallax animation. It's beautiful. Yeah, and when you see it, like strangely, when they're small, it looks even better. Because
I would imagine so.
It looks amazing in the VTT. And so we're trying to do all of them. And if you pledge now, $99 or more, which is the regular tier, you will get this for free. You will get these animated tokens.
You will? I thought that it was only for the first 72 hours. Is that really
doing special things if you do it during the stream? Because I know when the streams are, so I can just figure it out.
There you go.
It's not that hard. It's math. I'm like, I know when the streams are happening. I know when your pledge is happening. I can just filter it. It's a computer. But they're coming in.
So if you're a RFC regular, you get that bonus.
Yeah,
because you're watching the stream, you get the information.
Yeah, you get the bonus and you get the extra. But yeah, do pledge because this is normally $100 for these tokens, and I keep making more and more because Mark knows I never stop. But there's actually a couple.
Yeah,
but
he never stops. He always adds value without adding to the cost. It's sort of how things go, and then everybody gets an amazing product. And I guess it's a win-win. Other than like the fact that we added more stuff.
I know. I like this one with the dog. And then I like the guy, the animator's putting in like blinking eyes, which is like such a freaking good touch. So anyhow, the fire ones. Some of them are a little more better. Yeah, more better than others. Anyhow, with that, let's get to the cleric. You want me to bring up? I'll bring up. Whoops. Bring up. There we go.
Bring it up. I'm gonna do that $20 super chat real fast because it's not related to the cleric. The question is, will previous content be forward compatible, gameplay, mechanical sense, even names and locations have been changed? I mean, that's what Paizo has said, that you can just use any of your old content. And really, even though we're going to list a lot of very small changes to the cleric, some bigger, but mostly very small, it's not really enough that it's going to make your old content not work, that like something that was a 15-foot emanation is a 20-foot emanation or something like that. So it'll be fine.
Yeah, I mean, I think in most of these cases, especially for the cleric, I think mostly you're looking at small incremental changes that are kind of buffs. Maybe it's a little bit more complicated than that, but by and large, it's like the game worked without these changes. So for some reason, if you're using something in the past, it's totally fine.
By the way, total non sequitur in the Pathfinder's 2e edition Facebook group, it says, I just bought the Battlezoo Dragon Ancestry book. I hope to play a dragon someday. Yeah. That was just posted. Does that make you feel good, Mark?
Yeah, that is good. So if you look at the cleric advancement, you can see that it looks like it's mostly the same. Resolve had its name changed for cleric to be called Resolute Faith, which is a much cooler name than just the more generic Resolve. But it looks the same here. However, it is in fact not the same, and that's because of the fact that the changes to cleric advancement are sort of hidden in names like X Doctrine and Initial Proficiencies. So what happened? Well, yes. I mean, that's not hidden. That's just one of the abilities changed. But yes, in fact, the initial proficiency, I think, are the same, unlike with Bard. But what happened here is that like Derik said, big change. Basically, clerics previously had charisma as an attribute that they would also want to raise. Since wisdom is an attribute that everybody wants to raise pretty much as high as possible, and having also charisma, that meant that clerics before were often had to not get maximized survivability. So clerics, by the removal of all charisma, Divine Font now scales basically as fast as humanly possible, except if you had previously taken your Apex item on charisma, you would have been able to get one more.
Which almost no one did. And
almost no one did.
Right.
Okay. So, but if you did, you could have gotten one more. It basically scales as fast as humanly possible. There's another feat that we'll get to that removed charisma and scaled it like more or less with a pretty high charisma.
Right. And just to be very clear, so in the past, right, a cleric got their font. It could be harmful font. It could be healing font. That's still the case, right, depending on your deity. But it was 1 plus your charisma modifier number of heals at max level per
Now
day.
it's 4, then 5, then 6 at the same levels that it would have gone up.
Right. It is 4 at level 1, 5 at level 5, and 6 at level 15. So without you doing anything with charisma, you just get more of these heals. And you can
get what the person who put 16 in charisma, then 18 at level 5, then 19 at level 10, then 20 at level 15 would have gotten. So that's pretty big. We mentioned with the Bard before that the 3 classes that are in this set of 8 that are pretty much universally considered to be very strong are Bard, Cleric, and Fighter. Wizard, as has been mentioned by Paizo before, I think even recently, has a lot of people who consider it to be strong, but it's polarizing because there's a decent number of people who rate it really, really low too. They're not that many, but they are vocal and they do exist and are a minority that you can notice on surveys that they're there. And Cleric was already strong, even though having to take charisma made it harder to take a very high constitution or dexterity or something like that.
And I think that really showed off mostly in the War Priest build, right? Because in the War Priest build, you know, a lot of people ended up basically saying, I have to tank my wisdom. And basically, because there's I'm never going to cast a spell that is going to involve a DC. And because I need charisma and I need strength and I need constitution and I wouldn't mind a point of dex or 2. So like you were stretched so thin. And so this now allows you to basically ignore charisma unless that is something that, you know, you still want to be part of your character's shtick because of skills or whatever. But it doesn't feel as much of a mandatory thing. And I like it. I mean, it's going to allow you to be more. War priests in particular are going to look different now. And I like that.
Yeah. War priests have a much easier time. Cloistered clerics, I feel like already were fine, and now they're just making out like a bandit.
Yes.
It could have been interesting if that change was specifically in War Priest, or if War Priest was changed to use strength and cloistered use charisma or something like that. I would see some. Anyway, that one change to War Priest makes so much of a difference for War Priest because I have seen War Priest before, and that charisma effect kind of hurt them, but other than that, they are actually pretty strong compared to what people say.
Not to mention, right? And this is just me. I could just be biased. When I think of the quintessential, right, War Priest, I think of a dwarf, right?
Yeah, their charisma is not necessarily high,
and they had a charisma flaw, you know. So like that, you know, it felt like, oh man, they kind of make bad War Priests, and I didn't like that. You know, I never liked that. I know they changed it so you could do +2/+2, but if you wanted to get the 3 buffs and the 1 flaw, it's like, it was charisma. And so I think this is a great change. I think it's easier. I think it makes the cleric more sad and less mad, which I think is in general a good thing. And single attribute dependency versus multiple attribute dependency for people who don't know what that is. And so, I thought, you know, and again, this is just one change. And let me tell you, folks,
this is huge for the War Priest just on its own. This alone would makes up like pretty much everything that the War Priest probably really needed, because it actually is like pretty effective at what it does. Maybe what it does isn't what people would want it to do, which I think I would like to get to right now, because the only other change that happened in this entire section, even though we said there's a million changes, which there are, is that War Priests at level 19 gain Master Proficiency. I find this an interesting and somewhat unusual choice, due to the fact that given the charisma choice, War Priests are pretty much they're pretty much fine. Arguably, maybe at level 13, they have a bit of a dip that lasts for 13 and 14, maybe. But by the time they get to 15 through 19, they're really doing great. They have high level spells. Now they've got this charisma thing. We're going to see that they can get heavy armor from a feat very easily. Helps them out a ton. That's great quality of life feat. This level 19 thing comes so late in the life cycle of the War Priest that they already were doing fine before because they had very high level spells, other than the charisma thing. It helps them when they're already strong and possibly hedges out other characters at exactly level 19, but it doesn't help them when they might have needed it at 13.
I'm not going to hate on and a buff to the War Priest, but I basically completely agree with Mark, which is it's cool, it's great, it's awesome that they got it. But the problem with the War Priest's attack bonus progression is earlier in the life cycle. It is like, as Mark said, at 13, when everybody else goes to master and you're still stuck at expert, and before it was for the rest of the game. It's like, no, it's like that master would have mattered more earlier, but now
especially since your stat parity was bad at 13 and 14 as well. Sure. That's why those two levels were particularly painful.
Right.
So obviously getting Marshall at 13 would be cracked. It would not just be that at level 19 you're hedging out a bunch of Marshall builds, partially because of the feats we're about to describe, but it would be for much of the game that you are, because starting at 7 you already got expert.
Right.
Now, but there are other things that could have been done. Maybe it would have something like deity's guidance, where your deity is always aiding you, and therefore you get, when you use your favorite weapon of your deity. And this also makes sure you don't cheesily turn the martial proficiency or the favorite weapon proficiency from your favorite weapon into all weapons using other feats.
Right.
If you're using your favorite weapon, you get a +1 circumstance bonus on all attack rolls or something like that.
Fair,
it wouldn't stack with other things, putting you up even higher. It would stack with your heroism, and you could give it at an earlier time, for example.
This is something that I am going to complain about, which is it. As a War Priest, one of the doctrines that you get, the second doctrine, is you become trained in all martial weapons, right? And then in your third doctrine, you become an expert in your deity's favorite weapon and in martial weapons. And that used to be that was the cap. That meant that your War Priest could go, I'm going to use a longsword, I'm going to use a maul, I'm going to use a hammer, and it was fine. But and that might be the way you build your character. And then you go the entire game, and you get to 19th level, and you get this increase from expert level proficiency to master, but it's only with your deity's favorite weapon.
That's a good point.
So it's
and your deity could have a favorite weapon that is just your best weapon anyway. So it's not like it's that powerful. But it's not like it's that powerful to do what you're suggesting. What I'm saying is, compared to min-maxing your deity, it's not more powerful to just let you pick and then whichever one you want.
I think it's just weird because I think I speak for most people. If your character has been using a two-handed weapon or a war hammer or something the entire game, right? I mean, that's what your character's known for. That's what you got on your little mini. It's got what you got on your cool little character token art or whatever. To suddenly go to 19th level and be like, yeah, guys, sorry, I got to switch over to the whip because that's my deity's favorite weapon. Or not get the bonus, right? And not miss out on
you
2.
Definitely are going to take.
You want the bonus. You're going to take the +2.
Now you're going to min-max for your deity having the stronger favorite weapon. That's sort of what why I was saying. And you can find one that has a favorite weapon that's whatever one you want, probably. Now there is an even bolder thing. I mentioned the +1 circumstance bonus at a lower level, and then not give master proficiency. That might have actually helped it more when it needed it more. An even bolder thing. There's only one real reason why the War Priest had to be in there. It's because of OGL. The OGL Cleric was just a Godzilla that was good at fighting, and its spellcasting was just better than everyone else. And a cloistered Cleric is more like clerics in a lot of
white mage
and fantasy.
Yeah.
And so with the OGL gone, maybe they didn't need the bolder thing is could have cut the War Priest doctrine, cut all those doctrines, just put the things directly into the Cleric.
I also would have been fine with them
the doctrine category, and then make a class archetype or a Magus style limited caster.
I would love to have seen the War Priest be made. That could become the new Cleric, or it could just be called the War Priest. The Cleric could go away entirely, and then you have a new class maybe called the Priest right? Or the priestess or something like that. And that class is sort of your, sort of your white mage, your sort of holy person in robes and not really a combatant. I think that would have been cool.
You could do it. You could have the priest or the cleric be the robe one, and you have the war priest or whatever. Maybe the cleric and war,
or just call them cleric. Yeah,
cleric can be the one that's roby, and war priest can be the one that's warry, because those names were there before, and then they could have been like a mega style thing. There's a lot of things you can do.
That's not what they did.
You couldn't. That's not what they did, and they obviously couldn't have done all of that in this book.
Yeah. So correct. No, correct. But so going
those are some of the biggest changes to the class, because they happen to either the entire class or to one of the two doctrines.
Right. This has to do with your core progression. Now, to be fair, I think Mark mentioned this, right? The cloistered cleric didn't really change at all, except for the healing font, which everybody gets.
Yeah.
And there is sanctification.
Yes. And we mentioned this in our first stream, but sanctification is alignment has been removed. Now, based on your deity, you may or may not choose to become sanctified, holy or unholy. And if you're wondering, like, why is there a sanctified trait that is separate from the holy and unholy trait? I've seen in all these things, because I was wondering that for a while. It's because of the fact that it's a handy trait that appears sometimes later, and is like, if this trait shows up, then you throw on holy or unholy as appropriate for your character. So if you're sanctified to holy, and one of the focus spells gained the sanctified trait, which it did, I think it was the one that the zeal one that gives you extra damage on your weapon, gained the sanctified trait, which means if I chose to be holy, that means that one is sanctified, and it's sanctified to holy, and vice versa for unholy. So it's basically just it's a slightly more complicated and techie way of doing good and evil alignment, but it completely removes the need for alignment, and it works well. It's easy to convert, and there's nothing more to it. People are always like, is there something else? Is there like, is there, that's all there is. That's all you need. And it's very easy to deal with, other than being a little more techy than just the original version was.
Right. And by and large, I like this change. I like the idea that some deities require you to sanctify, right? If you're signing up for my team, you're signing up for the battle for the soul of Galarian. And there's other deity goes, I don't really care. You could sanctify or not. It really just depends on your cleric and how, your deity, and how not only how your deity is, but how your cleric's relationship with the deity is. And I think that's a really cool nuance. And I think
really like sanctification.
I like it too. I think the sanctification is a cool idea, and the way it interacts mechanically with the rest of the game. We'll see this in some of the other things, but you used to have all those weird, if you're this alignment opposed with this alignment, that's chaos, and that's we get rid of all of that. And it's basically like, are you team good or are you team evil? Or are you not? Are you on the sidelines, right? And that's it. It almost kind of goes back to the OG D&D, where you had
only law and chaos,
law neutral chaos, right? And chaos meant the forces of evil and destruction, and law meant the forces of good and chivalry. So it's almost kind of like that, actually, because it even says in the sanctification, which commits you to one side for struggle over the souls of the planes.
That's right.
So it is a cosmic level struggle.
Yeah. It's a cosmic struggle, and if you're not part of that cosmic struggle, you're just a really nice dude or a really nasty one, then you're not sanctified. That's not enough. Okay, so I'm now going to go through every change in Cleric, except things like void and vitality damage or whatever. It's like we know that negative damage was changed to void damage. I'm not going to tell you every time that happens, but I will tell you if an entire feat had its name changed or removed to be combined because of a larger change. For instance, if the feat had negative or positive in it and its name was changed, I will mention the new name of the feat. So to get us started, starting at first level feats and moving up, the castigation feats were combined between having a good and an evil one. Were combined into divine castigation. They still do the same thing that they did before.
Right. But I will point out, though, that in my personal opinion, this got a little stronger. So for those of you who aren't aware of what the base level castigation feat did, is it basically allowed your heal spells, which could normally only damage undead, to damage demons and devils and basically it could damage fiends. Now, it's still going to do that, but what it really says is that if you have the opposing trait. In other words, if you have sanctified and you are holy,
then it damages them and it does spirit.
Yeah, and it does spirit. But what this means is if there is an opposing spellcaster or cleric who has the unholy trait, right? The evil priest of Lamashtu has the unholy trait. She's not undead. She's just, she's not a fiend. She's just an evil lady, but she sanctified. She has the unholy trait, divine castigation. If you have the holy trait, because you chose to take up the mantle of good and righteousness, you could do damage to her with your heal spell. That's true. So, it's a much more easy blanket explanation. It's very easy.
It's a great way to apply it too. Remember back in TF1 when they tried to come up with a list that was like that was like clerics of opposing deities, evil dragons, undead and fiends. And
you have to come up with
random. Why are dragons on this list?
What is team bad guy? Right? There was no definition of team bad guy.
I really think that's such an elegant way to decide what it goes on to that I really like it. It's probably not going to affect you very often at all, but it's just an elegant game design. It's future proofed well and it's great.
Yeah. So and also it reduces text in the book because it takes holy castigation and unholy castigation, vile desecration or something like that, and it combines it into one. So divine castigation, in my opinion, cleaner, better, a little bit of a buff in my personal opinion, and I think it's a good, option.
Yeah, it's technically a buff. You may never see that buff even across the entire campaign, depending on what you fight, but you may see it once or twice, so it is a buff. Yep. Communal healing can now heal somebody else instead of you with the extra healing that is in it.
Is this level 1?
I think we're on to level 2 because there's only one change in the level 1 feat.
I just want to be clear that we're saying. So level 2 used to have communal healing, which let you heal somebody else. Or no, yourself.
What happens is when you heal somebody, you kind of take a little bit of healing to when you heal someone else and don't selfishly heal yourself, you take a little bit of healing too. So if you're both hurt, you can help yourself. Now it can also pass that extra healing on to someone else, not the primary target.
Right. And to be fair, there used to be communal healing at level 2, which let you, and then there was improved communal healing at level 4. It was 2 feats. They have gotten rid of improved communal healing and they have combined it into one. And it's 1 feat, it's level 2, and it does the same thing that those 2 feats did in combination, which...
Yes, I will not remove the thing at level 4 where I said that they removed improved communal healing, but no, I mean, it might as well just say it.
I mean, let's be clear. That was way too of a small of effect to be a feat. And so to be able to just combine it into one thing is...
I think the first one was fine as a feat, but once you put the second one in, it was kind of too small to be a second feat that came off of the first one. I think combining it is better than removing the second one.
I still think it should be 2 times the spell's rank, not the spell's rank, but that's not neither here nor there. The amount of healing
that is probably a higher level feat at that point because it's quite a bit of healing compared to the base amount of healing of certain heals.
Right, but moving on.
We'll see a higher level feat that does something similar to that later on.
Yeah. Now, this isn't a feat change, but it is something I do want to bring up because people did ignore this all the time. And I don't know if this is for me, this is primarily a cleric problem, okay? Predominantly a war priest problem. And this is about emblazoned armament, right? So for people who don't know, in Pathfinder 2nd edition, before the remaster, a spell, the number of actions of a spell correlated to the number of components that went into the spell.
Usually, not always. Not correlated, but it wasn't causation.
Right. But in the case of heal, in particular, you had 1 action heal, 2 action heal, and 3 action heal. And the 3 action heal had a material component, which the game very specifically stated you need an open hand or to be holding your holy symbol in order to do this, which meant if you were a war priest and you had a shield and your warhammer, you could not cast 3 action heal without dropping one of your weapons. Emblazoned armament used to sort of be a way around that because you could emblazon the holy symbol onto your shield, and that counted as wielding your holy symbol, which meant you could cast your 3 action heal. They got rid of components in the remaster. And so now 3 action heal does not have, it just has the manipulate and concentrate tags, which means that you can have both your hands free or have both your hands full and still cast a spell. So emblazoned armament, to me, if you wanted to cast 3 action spells as a cleric, was usually kind of a feat tax, but now it's not. You don't have to.
That's true. In fact, that's a change in the spellcasting chapter. Honestly, the Divine List got a lot of changes so that will affect Cleric a lot. Like Cleric's power has boosted up by a massive amount
I don't know that it's gone up. I don't know that it's gone up 2 tiers worth of power, but I would say
it's gone up by a massive amount.
It's clearly gone up at least a solid tier of power. Yeah, I agree. Actually,
and it was already of these 8 classes one of the strongest ones.
Both from the cleric class itself and from buffs to the divine spell list.
Yes, I agree. That's kind of why I brought that up after mentioning the divine spell list change. So cleric was already one of the stronger ones, and it got the rich got richer in this case. Let's bring on some more feats. Speaking of rich got richer, turn undead. A feat to gain the passive effect that on critical failures, undead, they're lower level than you, run away from your heal spells. Now is Panic the Dead. Every undead that critically fails runs away from your heal spells, and they are frightened 1 when they regularly fail.
Not critical fail.
Just regularly fail. This causes it to gain the fear trait, and so therefore it adds that mindless undead are immune to fear. This is gaining the fear trait and mindless undead being immune to the fear is technically a nerf, because that means that other creatures that are immune to fear are immune to it, or that have a bonus against fear have a bonus against it. But it is far more than that overcome by the fact that this is just all the time. So if you're just doing it and you accidentally, the big bad got a 1, it'll happen eventually and they run away. Even without a 1, the frightened 1 effect is very good.
Right. So, I mean, let's call it what it is, right? You're playing Abomination Vault. That has a lot of undead. You might not take turn undead in a normal Pathfinder 2 campaign. You're playing, Agents of Edgewatch or something. But if you're playing Abomination Vaults or you're playing the monk,
you obviously take it when there's a lot of undead. Either way.
Before, it was kind of a feat because it only did something on a critical failure. Now, if they fail or critically fail, they get frightened 1. And if they critically fail, they're fleeing regardless of the monster's level. And so, obviously fleeing is huge. You're basically eating up that monster's 3 actions. I mean, it's like
you're eating up 6 of their actions.
Right, because they have to run away and then they have to come back. Yeah. So it could be a huge relief on the rest of the party can go pounce on the one target while the other one's going, and then coming back.
It was already like a nice thing to take against undead because of the fact that you didn't have to do anything and they might run away. But now it's just like undead are wrecked if you take this. Obviously, you need to know they're going to be undead. It doesn't help you if there aren't undead.
Right. So solid buff and good.
Another feat that was added.
To answer real quick, Ian, is fleeing force movement? No, it not. It does trigger reactions.
It's not force movement. They just run away. That's how it is.
Yep. All right.
So trying to get through these. War Priest armor feat was added to give heavy armor for War Priest. Great feat. It gives it to them. They get it. It scales it up.
And it scales with their proficiency.
Yeah, so it scales with their War Priest proficiency.
So now you don't have to become a champion dedication just to get heavy armor.
Well, you didn't even need to take War Priest armor to get heavy armor because heavy armor proficiency.
Yeah, but heavy armor proficiency doesn't scale. Oh, did they change that? It does scale.
It scales the same speed as this feat does. At least it only scales to expert at level 13, but that's what you're getting either way.
I did not know that.
Yeah, it does. It's in the general feats. You have to see those very small changes. Yeah. So necrotic and radiant infusion were combined to divine infusion. It's exactly the same.
We're on to 4th level feats now.
Yes, we're on to 4th level feats. But they were combined into divine infusion. The raised symbol feat was added. This feat is
bonkers, people.
Incredibly powerful, and in a way that seems like it was made without paying attention to the other feats that were in the cleric class that are higher level and less powerful than it.
Enjoy it now before this gets nerfed. I think this is going to get errated.
It was like, do they just want clerics to be the best shield users and shield users to multi-class into cleric? Because it gives you +2 circumstance bonus to saving throws when you raise your shield that has a holy symbol or a religious symbol on it. But I was like, maybe they did. Maybe that's okay. But then they still have, we'll get to it, a 12th level feat that gives you a +2 circumstance bonus on saves against some things, not even all things.
Right. So
and that is weaker than this 4th level feat, and it's in this list of feats.
So to be clear, raised symbol is something that even a cloister cleric could get good use out of, right? They might not have a shield. They might not be using a shield.
But they're definitely going to be using a shield once they have this.
Right. But if you have a holy symbol,
you don't need shield block.
Or if you have a holy symbol or a shield with a holy symbol on it, then when you raise your shield, you not only get that +1 or +2 circumstance bonus to your armor class, you also get a +2 circumstance, and this is so critical, circumstance bonus to saves.
Stacks with heroism.
Stacks with heroism, stacks with other status bonuses to saves. Circumstance bonus was really hard to get to saves, especially in a blanket +2 to all of them until like this. I mean, think about it this way. Mark and I were talking about this. Higher level cleric, your war priest, whatever, you've got heroism on you, right? Higher level, you're getting +2 to all your saves, status bonus. You raise your sword, you raise your shield. Now it's a +4 bonus or +5 bonus to all 3 saves. This is incredible. Wait, that isn't all the feat does.
Yeah, it isn't. Now, it's not going to come up a lot, but as if it needed to give you something more, even though it obsoletes a 12th level feat, it also makes it when you succeed against a vitality or void effect, you get a critical success instead. Yeah.
So if somebody hits you with a void damage spell, like a negative damage spell, right? Like what's that low level line?
A lot of death ones are like big, bad, really nasty ones.
Right. So I mean, this just means successes become critical successes, and that's on whether someone's harming you or someone's trying to instantly kill you. Anything with the void effect or vitality effect for whatever reason. If you were making a save against that, maybe you're team evil. Anyways, this is an awesome, incredible feat, and it'll really make the sort of shield cleric war priest just that much cooler. But wait,
so
there's more.
But wait, there's more. Wait, I thought
for level 4.
Oh yeah, there's more at level 4. That's it for Ray's symbol. It's honestly one of the most powerful 4th level feats in the game.
It is an S tier feat. It is an S tier feat.
S plus because maybe it's
broken.
getting that 12th level feat and being like, why is this even still here? All right, so restorative strike feat was added to the game. It was not. This is called
the Logan likes to play 4th edition, and he added this feat. That's the only thing I can come up with, Mark.
So restorative strike is basically Channel Smite's other half, kind of. It's a 2 action where you heal or harm yourself to heal yourself, smack the enemy with a +1 status if you're using your favorite weapon, and assuming it hits, you also heal or harm to heal one of your allies who's next to the enemy you hit. You kind of pass the healing on through the enemy, channel it through their body into your ally.
Right. So to be clear,
you basically get 2 1 action harmer heals, the healing type, not the damaging type, 1 on yourself and 1 on an ally, assuming you hit, for the action economy and spell cost of 1.
Right, which means you are, as a cleric, you're spending 2 actions to 1 action heal yourself, 1 action strike, 1 action heal your ally who's adjacent.
If you hit
there, that's the
with a +1 bonus on this,
and you get a +1 bonus to hit, which means you're more likely to hit, obviously.
Yes,
but also because it's an ally adjacent, maybe they're flanking, so your chances of hitting are even better. But more than that, you're also getting 2 1-action heals for the price of 1 slot.
Only 1 slot.
Because a lot of times you kind of feel bad with the 1-action heal because you're missing out on how much extra damage or healing the 2-action version can do. But when you get to roll a 1-action heal and a 1-action heal for 1 slot, that suddenly feels a lot better. This is awesome.
I like it. It's a cool ability.
So cool.
Unlike Ray's symbol, cool. It doesn't raise eyebrows. It's just cool. It's a great add. Clerics like it. War priests like it. Fantastic feat.
I don't think this is broken, but I definitely think this is A tier. It's also so evocative. I love the idea. Everyone
it fits with the cleric's identity really well.
Yes, it's so good. I love it.
I love it too. Yep. So Sacred Ground. Once per 10 minutes, you put in a 30-foot burst so that when people sit there for 10 minutes, they get back hit points equal to your level. There's a reasonable amount of healing that doesn't take your entire 10 minutes. Right. That said, they put in so many ways to do things, and even the meta of just refilling your focus points for 30 minutes, probably after each fight, if your GM lets you, makes this feat instantly less valuable than it could have been. Even though it's cool, I like the flavor of it, and
number one,
it's an effect that you can do that and then treat wounds.
Yeah, number one, this is something I noticed in the original Pathfinder. There were obviously domain spells that are focus spells, but by and large, every class had an ability to basically infinitely heal using focus points, right? Bards had an ability, druids had an ability. Clerics were the one class that did not have a readily available, unless you specifically went to a certain domain, ability to just heal basically infinitely out of combat. Sacred Ground is sort of fixes that problem. And if you think about the math of it, let's say you're level 5 your paladin is healing 18 points of damage with their lay on hands, but that does take a focus point. Let's say they have one focus point, they're healing
you're
18,
healing 5 to everybody.
but you're healing 5 to everybody. So in that same 10 minutes,
it doesn't take your 10 minutes. So you can still be refocusing
or explore, right.
Or treating wounds.
Right. So you can double up the healing. So, but my point is, if you're healing 5 to everybody, you're actually healing 20 without using any focus points, without using up your
if
time.
Everybody's hurt. But yeah.
So again, I don't think this healing is pretty ubiquitous in Pathfinder 2, and medicine's pretty cheap to pick up. Yep. But I think this works, and I don't.
Yeah, I think it's functional. I like it. I think that some of the other changes they made to the meta has made it less valuable than it otherwise would have been. And obviously that symbol one is so cracked that I would never take anything else. But that would be true even if this said you can make a sacred ground once per 10 minutes.
Right.
And after resting for 10 minutes, all your allies heal up to full health.
Yeah, exactly.
So let's move on to the next
level 6.
Is level 6. Divine Rebuttal feat was added. It is a reaction when your ally is about to roll a saving throw against any magical ability of a creature you're adjacent to. You smack that creature, giving your allies a +2 circumstance bonus to the save if you hit, or +3 on a critical hit.
So this is
a very solid reaction.
This is the War Priest's attack of opportunity, right? Because basically, now granted, it only triggers when they cast a spell.
Or any magical ability. Breath weapon is magical.
When they roll a saving throw against a magical ability. So a spell or some sort of supernatural magical ability.
If the spell has a spell attack roll, it actually doesn't trigger this because nobody has to roll a saving throw.
Got it, right.
Unless they roll a saving throw later on.
That's an interesting point. Yeah, so in any case, if you are basing up a big monster and it does something to your allies and they have to make a saving throw, you get to whack it. And not only are you getting to do damage, but your ally, depending if you hit or critically hit, gets again, circumstance bonus, which is awesome. Big bonus.
And it's all the allies who have to make the save if it's an AoE. It's not just one ally who triggered it. This is a cool reaction,
your allies, all your allies.
It feels more like the Cleric because you're protecting your allies. It doesn't let you disrupt a buff spell or that enemy healing themselves or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, the classic example would be your War Priest is engaged with the dragon breathes breath weapon all over your entire party. You hit it, you crit it. All of your allies that are in the breath weapon get a +3 circumstance bonus to the saving throw. That's awesome. Huge. And it just feels cool. And
that will potentially getting a +3 might take away like a third of the damage, depending on where your allies are on expected value. And obviously it's swingy where it takes away either all of it or stops the double.
Right. Anyways, I think it's really cool.
It's a great reaction.
It is not going to come up all the time, but it is pretty cool.
All right. So Magic Hands was changed from giving you maximum to giving you slightly bigger die size and add your level. That is worse on a crit for quite a while than it was before, but it eventually scales to be better no matter what. And it is better on a regular success, even when you first get the feat.
Yes. So
I think that's good that it scales at higher levels, because otherwise it kind of obsoleted when you get to a really high level.
I do want to take a couple of minutes here, and I know time is precious, but I do want to take a couple of minutes here to just kind of discuss this idea, which is going in. We knew that there were certain things that were going to be changed, especially with the classes like Cleric or Champion in Core 2 coming out later next year, because of alignment. So we expected there to be these changes, but and then there was also, certain feats and stuff that maybe people said, oh, this is kind of bad, like it doesn't really do enough or something like that. I might be thought that there was going to be some, improvements there. But like feats like Magic Hands, I don't know how many people are taking Magic Hands, but feats like Magic Hands, which basically says, you're a cleric, so your medicine checks are better, and you get the max. And then here's this, which is kind of doing the same thing, but now it uses dice rolls.
It's a side grade, and it's better later on.
But why change this?
That is actually a question I had for some of these. We're going to get to a thing later on where one of the premonition feats changed its radius from 15 to 20 feet on how many allies you can hit, and the other one didn't. And it was just like, given that somebody had to learn a change, why change 15 to 20 feet, which is not even very much, and also not change it in the other one so that they're no longer parallel and it's harder to understand? I feel like every change you make normally is like that's another thing that people might get confused by when they're looking over it. It has to justify itself.
Yeah,
right?
The juice has to be worth the squeeze, right? So, this is going to require effort for people to adjust to. And again, I'm not saying this is a bad change.
I think this was a good change, but that it was probably not needed. And also, like, I'm not sure why it was made, but it's better than the original. That's my thought.
Right.
So selective energy, as I mentioned earlier, used to use 1+ charisma. It now just lets you select out 5 creatures to not be hit by your harm or your heal, which is essentially, since you get it at level 6, the maximum that you could have had at that level. It does not scale up to the maximum that you ever could have gotten with high charisma, unlike the font, but that's okay. 5 is usually plenty of things to exclude, unless your party was AoE damaging a large group of foes, and then you are healing right in that area, and you didn't kill any of the foes either, which is very unlikely. If there's that many foes, probably some of them critically failed.
Yeah.
So those are all the changes at level 6. At level 8, Restorative Channel was changed to use the new condition removal spells in the spell chapter. That's basically it. That's changes that I don't want to get too deeply into.
This has to change with the spells, but let me just say that because the new restorative spells, Sure Footing, Sound Body, Clear Mind, and Cleanse Affliction, are, in my opinion, better. This feat becomes better.
Oh yeah, the feat is vastly more powerful, but the spells are more powerful too.
Right.
That's correct. So that is worth noting that.
Right.
So next up, Aligned Armament was renamed to Sanctify Armament. It deals double the damage it did before, but only to those who are post-tier Sanctification, whereas previously, previously it was good at evil damage, so it was only to creatures who have the opposite alignment.
Right.
So,
but again, I think this is
double the damage it did before, but the damage was pretty low before. I think this feat was a good change. We're going to see that its upgrade feat got a kind of weird change. That we can talk about when we get to that level.
Yeah. Now, again, I'll just say this. This is an example of a feat where I think the holy, unholy, right before you had to match one alignment specifically. Now you just have to match versus unholy, assuming you're a good guy. And that just means that it's going to be easier for you to get this to trigger. Right.
Oh, I remember why I said it doubled it, but it affects fewer creatures, because a lot of creatures don't have unholy that used to have the evil alignment. Because I made short notes for all these. I was like, double damage, but affects fewer creatures. Because now you're only going to get that damage on fiends, undead, evil clerics of your other deity. You're not going to get it on like greedy mayor who's stealing from his citizens. And so it definitely makes sense that it needed to increase the damage by a significant amount, because it's much more restricted on where it applies. We'll see what happens with its upgrade feat when we get there. So Void Siphon was added. Flat out, it is critically failing against your harm spell for living creatures, gives them drained 1. Just flat out.
Pretty good. I mean, if you do an AoE harm and you get some crit fails in there, drained 1 is like adding extra damage equal to the your creature's level, basically. So that's pretty good.
Especially if you're fishing with 1-action harms, which I've definitely seen people do. The damage equal to their level is a significant percentage of all the damage that the 1-action harm did. That's true. Will give them penalties on their follow-up saves as well. So it's quite, given that you don't have to spend any action economy, you don't have to do anything, it just happens.
Right.
I know that you said before, Derik, that getting it only on a crit fail isn't great, but I like things that are like low frequency but very nice for you, and you don't have to do anything about it.
I tend to not. Just because I like, if I'm taking something, I want it to matter, right? I when it comes to
I like stacking up passives, because if I have to spend my actions on it, even if it's more likely to happen, then I can't just add it on to whatever else.
On that part, I agree. But like the example of like the Panic the Dead, where you get an effect on the failure and the critical failure.
Well, I mean, obviously that's stronger.
I know. I'm just saying, when things only happen like on a critical failure, or there's certain things in the game that have like a DC 18 check, something flat DC 18 check. At that point, like the chance of it happening becomes so infrequent that I start to question the value of that, even though it is passive and it's occurring in the background. But anyways, continue.
All right. So Zealous Rush is an interesting feat. And like I'm not super certain of its like concept here, but it is a reaction when you cast a divine spell. It takes 1 action or more to cast. If it was a 1-action spell, you stride 10 feet. And if it's a 2 or more action spell, you stride up to your full speed.
Right. So my idea here is, I think the War Priest idea is this, right? The combat starts. this is what the ideal war priest, again, they are taking a cue from the kineticist, and they're taking a cue from some of these other modern designs. What do I want my first turn to be as a war priest? I want to buff myself, I want to move in, and I want to attack. I couldn't do that before, right? Because unless I was hasted, because I need 4 actions to do that. Now, with Zealous Rush, I can spend 2 actions to heal myself, which gives me a free stride for the cost of a reaction. Yourself. Right?
Yeah.
Or sorry, I buff myself or I heal myself.
Yeah.
I then get a free stride. It does take my reaction.
Yeah,
and then I have 1 action left to strike.
So my question isn't when would you use it? Of course you would use it for that.
Yeah.
The question is, why is it a reaction instead of a sudden charge? Wouldn't it have been a 2-action thing that
maybe
has to
they
spell on yourself that's 2 actions?
Maybe they felt like it was too powerful without it eating up something.
Without eating your option? Maybe. Yeah, maybe it had to have a
like an additional cost.
Additional cost. That's fair. That's fair. I that's what I said that I was a little uncertain, is because of the fact that it was not a meta like activity, but it was a reaction. But it's still very good for anytime you're going to buff yourself and try to run in, or heal yourself and run out.
Right. Yeah. It's called Zealous Rush, but you could easily be a cloister cleric running away. Right. Because now what you could do is you could 1 action move in closer to the fight, use 2 actions, to cast like a Bane or a Bless or something like that, and then move out. And then, I'm sorry, you could do that, move, and then move again, is what I'm trying to say. You could double move.
Right.
I will say, regarding this, that also it's more reactions for the cleric, which come up more often. And because, again, a lot of people talk about the 3-action economy in Pathfinder 2, and that's wrong. It's actually a 4-action economy, because you have a reaction. And in most cases, a reaction can be just as strong, sometimes stronger than a regular action, right? Certainly for like strikes and stuff, because there's no multiple attack penalty. And so whatever characters have abilities, classes to have more reactions, like, I think that's a good idea, because I think that makes the game more fun. You know, when you don't have reactions, when your turn's done, your turn is done. And you got to wait the 10 or whatever minutes, 15 minutes before it gets back to your turn. You feel removed from the action. When you have abilities to do reactions, and I understand that this is not.
Yeah, but the problem is this is literally actually the opposite of what you said.
Yeah, no, it is.
This steals your ability to do reactions off of your turn, and now you can't do that because your reaction was definitely used on your turn.
Right. That's why I said I know this doesn't relate to this, but I like that they are trying.
It's related, but it actually removes the dynamic that you liked.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Like,
it's a little negative in that way.
Well, what I meant to say is, like, they were adding like divine rebuttal, which I like. I like that they're giving.
Divine rebuttal is so cool.
Right. Or they're adding what's the other one? The war priest.
That's I know what you're talking about.
You know what I want to talk about. But anyways, my point is,
there's just too many of these.
I like that they're adding that. So this is a little disappointing because it takes away from that. Yeah.
All right. So we only have like 37 minutes. Let's see what we can get through.
Okay.
Castigating weapon has doubled its amount of damage. This is the feat that when you do your divine castigation damage to these unholy traded or holy, if you're an unholy creatures, it will add extra damage to your weapon or unarmed strengths until the end of your turn. It is now twice as much as it was before.
Right. It used to be half of the spell's level. Now
it's full.
Full spell's rank.
That's right. Heroic recovery is mostly the same, but it now lets them stand firm prone for free without reactions. I love it. 1 action spell shape / meta magic that when you're about to heal somebody, they get 3 buffs. And now if you're actually using it for them to recover and like wake up from being unconscious, it's great because they can just stand up.
Right. And to be clear, this is like one of like the hidden costs of like when you go unconscious, it already sucks, right?
Yeah.
But especially now that Paizo has clarified, by the way, Steven.
Yeah.
Wake up. Make a poll. I'm curious. How many of your people in your chat, and you might have done this already, but how many people in your chat were using the correct versus the incorrect version of the death and dying rules?
Reddit used that one. Reddit used that one already. It wasn't exactly, but it was about evenly split between. Was using the other version, will use it now, and I'm never going to use the version from the Game Master screen.
There's 3 versions though. There's also another one in the starter set that is different, believe it or not.
But my only point is going down now is worse than it has ever been, assuming that the clarification sticks. And I was just going to say, a lot of times people are like, oh, cool, you healed me. It's like, yeah, but you're still laying there prone on the ground. And when you stand up, things that have reactions might beat you back into unconsciousness. It's really kind of crappy. So adding that that person gets a little bonus and you're giving them an action. You're giving them an action. And it's a better action because it doesn't trigger reactions. So this is a much better, this is one of the better spell shapes, metamagics, because standing up is the thing. I mean, it really is. And especially when it provokes or triggers reactions, I should say. Now, Christmas says dying drops your held weapons and shield right.
No, not the
shield.
Shield
is strapped to your hand.
Shield
is now clarified.
Wait, let me give my 2 cents. Shield is strapped to your hand now, so you don't drop your shield. There we go.
Right.
And there's the new swap action, so you can sheathe your sword and draw your dagger as one action.
Right. Now, to be fair, technically, yes, you do drop your sword too, or mace or whatever.
But not your shield.
A lot of people just ignore that, though.
Not me.
Not us.
Not us.
Let me get this right. Let me get this straight. So when someone goes unconscious, on their turn,
they drop everything.
You make them spend one to two actions to pick up their shit, and then another action to stand up.
Yes.
Hey, what was your turn? I stood up. I got my stuff back.
That's all right, cool. Don't fall down.
Get unconscious in Steven's game. Or the game my GM is running also. Very deadly.
Have you played Pathfinder 2? Okay, anyways.
I have, Derik. So we need to go faster. We're definitely not on track whatsoever. So shared avoidance is the one I mentioned before. It has changed from a 15 to a 20 foot for your allies for like no particular reason. Like it's more, the other shared premonition feat did not change to 20. Like I'm not sure why you would make small changes like that when like each change has the cost of updating it, but like it's not different enough that I would say that it's a significantly different in power. So the feat through spell is gone. It's between Bard and Cleric is the only feat other than ones that became obsolete because they were combined that is just gone. So domain focus and all other feats like this for all other classes too now just completely refill you in one 10 minutes. It's not really worth it for a 12th level feat because you could have just spent a little more time and gotten all of your focus points anyway, which is an absurdly powerful ability that everybody has. So next after that is Fortunate Relief. So Fortunate Relief is a new feat. When you cast a healing spell that attempts to counteract something, you roll twice and take the higher effect, which is huge for counteract removing healing effects.
So my question here is, when it says a healing spell, what is the healing trait?
It's a trait that is on spells. Spells.
Is it on those remove afflictions?
Affliction removals have it. Okay. Yeah. So when it's trying to counteract them, you roll twice. That's really solid. And you can combine it with the now buffed affliction feat that we were talking about before.
Yeah.
Sapping symbol, a reaction when you raise your symbol, and we know you have raised your symbol. When you're about to take damage from a melee attack, attempt a religion check against the triggering creature's will DC. They are then temporarily immune for 1 minute, regardless. If you crit, they're enfeebled 2 until they spend at least one action moving away from you. If you succeed, they are enfeebled 1 until they spend at least one action moving away from you. And since it's happening right when you're about to take damage from them, you will prevent some of the damage right now.
1 less damage.
Yes, or 2 on a crit. So I feel like at the point that you're doing this, you might as well block with the shield that you obviously have your symbol on, because let's be real, you definitely have your symbol on a shield. Especially
now with sturdy runes, you're going to have some crazy shields.
It does have some value if you know the fight is really locked down and the enemy is not going to move away, to protect other people from the enemy's follow-up attack rolls because of enfeebled 2. So it does definitely have a decent use case to it, though. And you might not have shield block, but it's usually easier to get it than a 12th level feat.
By the way, just randomly, since everything that was previously published is legal, could you put a sturdy rune, one of the new sturdy runes or whatever they're called, onto a sturdy shield?
No.
Why not?
Because sturdy shields still exist, and you can't.
Oh, does it?
Yeah. Also, it's very.
But I'm going to use the old version.
other than if you're trying to do a too good to be true or something that is clearly would never be allowed by any GM who pays attention to the update.
Well,
it's very clear that the way that all of the shields work now is that they start with like the baseline hardness of their material, and then they get the runes on top of that, which is very smart design. And we'll talk about that. It's a smart way to do it. There's a few corner cases with adamantine that may need to be adjusted by some groups to not make certain items like the go-to always.
Apparently,
but
sturdy runes have a max hardness, so it doesn't.
Yeah, they do have a max hardness, Derik, so it wouldn't do anything anyway.
Got it.
But also, even if it weren't for that, you can see because of the way that Paizo updated all of the shield, that all shields that get updated get the sturdy rune that's like below their level, just below their level, added to them automatically so that you can upgrade it, kind of like how specific weapons have striking and potency runes already built in. So if you were going to update an old shield that had very high hardness, it should be updated to say that it had built in like whatever the appropriate rune is. That's what Paizo did, and that is what you should do too. So next after that is 14th level channeling block feat was added. It is a shield block feat that also makes it even more likely that you're not going to use sapping symbol, because this shield block feat is so much shield block.
It's a lot of shield block.
It is basically roll your heal or harm amounts, and then that is how much extra you shield block. Right. It's essentially
it's when you shield block, you can sacrifice a slot of heal or harm.
Which is almost obviously going to come from your font.
You roll
let's go on.
Right, which is going to come from your font, but you could load up. You roll 1d8 for each rank of the spell. So if you're high level, you have a 10th rank heal, you're going to roll 10d8, and you add it to the hardness of the shield.
Yep. So it's basically just extra healing. It's basically like just casting that heal or harm spell on yourself as a reaction as the damage comes in to prevent it, except that you can do that at the same time as your shield block. Yeah. Like if there was already a feat that was printed that was a reaction that said reactive heal reaction, you would take damage. You cast your heal spell right as you're taking damage. Instead of healing, reduce the triggering damage by the amount of a one action heal. People would, I think, definitely take it at that level. This is that, except you also get your shield block amount, and it stops your shield from taking damage. It's incredibly, it is incredibly powerful. It can't be taken by multi-class characters, and it wouldn't be good for them anyway, because you obviously use this with your font. But it makes single-class cleric shield block, like I was saying before when Derik and I were talking about it, the 19th level War Priest shield build is just yet another reason why it kind of hedges out other shield-based users at that level. So next after that is going to be extend aligned armament. I promised you guys that I would talk about this. It is now called lasting armament. And here's the thing that's really weird about it. Okay. It used to last for a minute. Now it lasts for an hour. Why? Why not just say that it's no longer an action or it lasts forever until you sanctify another weapon? Like, what's the point of having it last for an hour?
Right. Until your next daily.
When you can just do it every hour, so you're obviously going to have it up all the time. It's just an extra bookkeeping.
Think about the kineticist, right? The kineticist has armor in earth, which
the kineticist has many things that
they have to just constantly like refresh it on themselves. There's no reason why they should have to or shouldn't have to, but the game rules technically state that a kineticist has to refresh their armor in earth every minute, or every 10 minutes.
That you can use at will. Takes only if it takes a minute, maybe that's the difference. But if it just takes like an action or two and it lasts an hour, like what's the point? Why not? Why is it just not up all of the time? Is it only for when you wake up when you were asleep? I guess, but like I don't know. I would say either keep the shorter duration or make it just up until you use it again. Obviously, you don't want it on lots of different weapons, and it still has that restriction.
Yeah.
So next after that, Rebounding Smite was added.
This is a level 16 feat.
It is a level 16. We've made it to 16 now. There are not as many feats at these levels, and a lot of them didn't change. So this is a reaction when you miss with your channel Smite strike. You cast a one-action harm or heal, targeting a different creature. It has to be the same one you expended, but it targets a different creature than the target of your strike. So this is particularly good for healing clerics who happened to Channel Smite was already not great for them because it only would help them against undead. But if you knew you were fighting undead and you had that, because you can then throw a heal to heal one of your allies. Whereas if you're a harming, there might not be someone that was in your range.
I mean, it'd be next to you, right?
Yeah, you'd have to have more than one enemy next to you, which may not always happen. It's still a very good feat anyway, because it gives you peace of mind if you're going to miss with that.
I kind of want more out of a level 16 feat, but
that's sort of what I was saying, is that level 16, the fact that they have to have two that are next to you, maybe could have added a little range. Whereas if you're healing, you at least will be able to heal yourself if you were hurt at all.
Right.
So after
would it be insane, Mark? Now this does take the reaction, so it eats it up just like we were talking about. Yes. Would it be insane to say that if you miss with a smite, you don't expend the slot for a level 16 feat?
For a level 16 feat to just be like the slot isn't expended on a miss?
Yeah,
I mean, maybe, because
it's Pathfinder 2, and because it's Pathfinder 2, it says, and it's still expended on a critical miss. You know,
you could, or like honestly, if you think that's too much because it doesn't take your reaction or whatever, like it's certainly at least for level 18 feat. Like it could be moved up. Like it was a new feat. They could have added at any level. I would say
true. It didn't have to be this level.
Even if at level 16 was too much, I'd say it surely could be at level 18, and maybe it would even be okay at level 16. It just depends on what you're doing. So next up, Remediate used to work on alignment-based effects. It's a once per hour free action when you do a 3-action heal or harm, where it will counteract. The old version counteracted alignment-based magical effects in the spells area. The new one counteracts any divine effect in the spells area, which is more things than it could before. And I mean, it's a freebie. And when there is a bad divine thing in the spells area, you're going to want to be able to counteract it for a free action. So it could potentially be pretty useful. Next, Divine Apex was added at level 18. I do not understand why this feat exists.
Yeah, I mean, read it. I mean, here, I'll read it.
Read it.
All right. It says, so this is 18th level feat, Divine Apex. It has the Cleric trait, level 18 feet. You can pour divine power into an item, letting the wearer exceed their limits. When you complete your daily preparations, you can touch one worn magical item that doesn't have the Apex trait. It gains the Apex trait until your next preparations, and you choose one of your deity's divine attributes. The item increases the attribute amount by 1 or to +4, whichever is higher. As normal, a character can only benefit from one Apex item at a time.
So why would you have a level 18 feat that just makes it so that you don't get the level 17 item that you probably want to get? It's just weird. There's never a feat like that that's just like, this is a feat that now you don't have to get this item, but also now you've spent your feat slot on it.
Right.
Also, I hope your deity had an Apex skill that was wisdom, or one of their choices was wisdom, because otherwise,
I mean,
what's going on? And you don't get the other awesome things that are usually in an Apex item.
Right. I was gonna say Apex items are things that you want to get anyways, because they usually have a lot of cool ability. Plus, Apex items are kind of like the equipment capstone for your character. It's your Excalibur, right? It's something that you have gone through the whole game and you're like, oh, cool, I finally get a stat increasing item. It's a big moment for you. And this is just kind of like saying, well, you could also use up one of your highest level, really cool class feats and then kind of get that instead.
It's very weird.
But it's not as good because it doesn't give you any of the other benefits.
I don't really understand it. So domain
copy fit.
Oh, it could be. It could be. Domain Wellspring is gone, and maybe was copy fit for that. Seriously, but all of the feats that were at level 18 that let you do the 3 focus points are gone, because you can just do that at level 1 now. So that was cut. Inviolable was added at level 18. It give every time anything hits you with an attack, period, whether it's a ranged attack, wherever they are, they take 3d6 spirit damage, because your deity is like, how dare you harm my my priest, which is and it can add holy or unholy if you are sanctified, which is a pretty good amount for something that there's no way to get around every time that you hit something.
Would it kill you so much for them to say it does 10 damage? Can't it just do 10 damage? Why do
10 is also easier, so you don't have to roll it.
I don't want to roll it every time. I don't want to roll it every single time.
I see that. How about this, Derik? It can be it could be half your level. That would be 9 that becomes 10, and
I let
it feels like it scales. And
yeah, for the last 2 levels
for
of the game.
one time at level 20.
I mean, 10 damage. I mean, again, at this level of the game, monsters literally have
a great feat.
Monsters have hundreds of hit points.
Sure, but that's
they also have. But that if you're being attacked by multiple foes, this might pump out 40, 50, 60 damage.
Yeah.
So yeah. I mean,
that foe, if they're attacking you, is probably going to hit you a bunch of times over the course of the fight, right? They're probably going to hit you 4 to 6 times before they die. If you're the one that they're hitting, that could be a significant percentage of their hit points.
To be clear, I think this is totally cool, and I think it's fine, and I
like it.
Yeah, I like it. Yeah.
If that's what you want on your
I just don't want to roll 3d6
fantasy. I agree. I don't want to slow down the game, but I like it.
Yeah, I like it.
So also, shared clarity, which I pointed out was not changed to go to 20 feet. It is just the same as it was before.
Right. So these are both premonition of feats, but one has a 20-foot radius and the other one has a 15. I think that's just an editing mistake.
And they used to both have a 15, and I just think somebody was looking at one of them and was like, I don't know, it could be 20, and they changed it to 20, and they didn't remember that there was a second one that was the same one.
But there should be an editor that is
similar,
looking at all these and making these comparisons. I
mean, that's not doing a design, some kind of design level thing like that is not the editor's job.
Oh, all right, fine. Whose job?
The designer who was doing a design pass maybe should have noticed that it was going
Mark's
off.
Job, but he's not there anymore.
But also maybe they don't care if it's parallel.
Okay.
Yes.
You are within my one aura, but you're not within my other aura.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I just feel like the change was a little small for a thing to make it and make people have to notice the change.
Mark, level 20.
Level 20, Avatar's Protection reaction was added. When you're critically hit, if you have the Avatar spell prepared as your 1/10 level spell, as a reaction, you immediately cast it. The hit crit becomes a normal hit. The damage is applied to the temporary hit points first, and you're basically okay.
You basically go into the Avatar state.
That's really cool. I like it because it stops you from having 2 avatars because you did not get the other feat. And so therefore that's a pretty significant opportunity cost, but it's a really cool way to use the Avatar spell.
Right. It is a cool way to use Avatar. It does create some weird perverse incentives where someone's like, I hope I get crit. I engage the enemy and can I drop prone? Can I expose myself because I really want him to crit me?
You're right. It creates 3 kind of bizarre situation, but I love the imagery of it when it happens. One is
100%.
Please just crit me. The second one is, well, I can't use my avatar because I'd have to spend actions on it if I use it now. I need to wait until something crits me. And the third is being like, well, I've optimized my character enough so that being an avatar doesn't help me that much. I'm mainly using this to negate a crit. And so you turn to Avatar at a weird time so to protect yourself when you're already kind of low and you're trying to not get crit. But I just think it's tactically interesting. It's visually interesting. It's thematically cool. It's like your deity comes down to protect you from a crit. I like it.
Can a question? I actually don't know the answer to this.
Okay.
I'm a high level cleric. I'm level 20. I'm an awesome war priest. I've got Avatar's protection. But I'm also wearing fortification armor.
I think if it gets negated, you can't use Avatar's protection.
So
you have to be critically hit, and you were not critically hit. If let's check fortification. Does fortification actually prevent the crit, or does it just it becomes a normal hit?
Right. It says each time you're critically hit with wearing the armor, attempt a DC blank check if on a successive. But when does that come in sort of the stack order?
Well, given that it's not an action or a reaction of any kind.
So it
just happens. First. So you would have to apply all the things that just happened before you check for triggers. Normally, it is a little bit ambiguous though, obviously, and it is for anything where a bunch of stuff all collides on the same potential trigger. It's just one of those situations where you're like, I hope my armor doesn't protect me. So then last thing, Meta Magic Channel was obviously changed to be called Spell Shape Channel due to the fact that Meta Magic is now called Spell Shape. It's still the same thing. So that's not all. We have 15 minutes. And maybe just can't react to these very much to go through all the changes to the focus spells, which are a lot of changes to the focus spells.
In terms of going over every change, I don't think we can do this. I will say one thing for people who are All right, I will say this because we're not going to go to all the details. In general, a lot of the classic cleric status spells that I gave bad grades to on all spells ranked because I felt they were too niche and relied on counteract checks have typically been combined and have either just work now or they have a sort of pseudo counteract check that operates at a lower level. I think it is very mechanically clunky. The fact that you now have two different ranks of counteract that you're applying on the same spell, but in general, a lot of those spells got a lot better. So
there you go. Oh yeah, I see. You're talking about the ones on the divine list. Yeah, there's no heckin' way that we can go through the divine list.
Right,
I'm only going through the domain.
I just wanted to say that divine list, in my opinion, is still probably the worst tradition, but it got stronger. Like to the point where it might be, on par or with.
It got a bunch of stuff. Yeah. Really, a bunch of stuff. So, as fast as possible, I'm just going to go through, and I guess you could give thumbs up or whatever to these as I do them. So, Blind Ambition was renamed to Ignite Ambition, probably to remove the word blind. It became a reaction that instead of applying for all of 10 minutes, applies just to the thing you're reacting to, but it gives a -1 period on any save result except for critical success, even if it doesn't have anything to do with their ambitions. And it's double the penalty it was before if you're advancing their ambitions. So with the ability to have 3 focus spells and just spam your reaction, this is just going to let you massively penalize something that's well saved. Pulse of the City. This one's a very confusing change. It became Pulse of Civilization. Here's what's so confusing. It's a focus spell that lasts for 8 hours. So it's basically just saying instead of having an advanced domain spell, you don't. You just gain the effect that you have a +2 status bonus on all times on city lores and have can make untrained checks on the lore of any city that's near you. It did gain a heighten that was. It has all the old heightens plus an additional heighten to go even more miles out at an even higher level than it had before. But it's just really weird when you have a focus spell that lasts that much longer than 10 minutes. Next is Veil of Confidence. It used to be that it was a veil where you appeared to be confidence, but then underneath, because its pride can be shown to be false pride, you were able to be pierced and then get on a critical failure, it ended and you got messed up. Now it still ends on a critical failure, but it still protects you instead of messing you up on the critical failure. So that makes it stronger on its end condition. Splash of Art was renamed to Creative Splash with no other changes made to it. It was not an OGL name either. So you're going to have to remember the new name. I kind of like the new name better, but also any name change is one that I'm going to have to remember. And if it's not an OGL based change, I feel like it's easier to keep the old one. Darkened Eyes became Darkened Sight. Instead of the fairly unique ability to suppress somebody's low light vision and dark vision, it now just gives you greater dark vision, which does not combo as well with putting a darkness and then the monster having dark vision, but does combo well with putting a darkness and you didn't have a way to see through it, and now you can. Death's Call did not change, which I call out because it has a spellcasting attribute modifier in it, and it still does. Sweet Dream becoming 1 hour instead of 10 minutes has the same thing where you can just have it up permanently on your party members, except it also now heightens to give up to a +3 status bonus, which means that you're possibly rocking multiple party members with +3 on all skill checks that are charisma or intelligence based at all times with Sweet Dream, depending on how much setup time you have. You could at least do it for one party member with almost no fuss. Hurtling Stone lost strength modifier, which we kind of knew it would, to damage. But now it does 1d6 more damage, which, unlike most spells that lost modifiers, is a substantial buff in most cases. Not for a strength war priest at higher level, but for anybody else, you're going to do more damage without having to put in any strength. It is still one action, so it is the most damaging at rank 1 action attack focus spell in the game. And in addition to that, it was gained an additional push effect. So it's just compared to 2d6 2-action attacks, which some of the other ones we'll see are, it's just really strong since it's 1 action. Fire Rain added on 1d6 damage per rank if they don't move, in addition to the damage it dealt, even on a miss but not a critical failure. Scholarly Recollection has a slight wording tweak to remind the GM to roll the secret check instead of you rolling the secret check. Mystic Beacon clarifies in an actual nerf that it doesn't apply to ongoing effects, the extra damage or healing. It only applies to an initial. Enduring Might, unlike the stone, does keep its strength modifier. So it seems like the ones that protect you based on a modifier were keeping the attribute modifiers. Moonbeam's first level damage was increased to 2d6. The heighten is still the same. So at least that means that 2-action Moonbeam doesn't do less damage than a 1-action Hurtling Stone.
How many more of these do we have, Mark?
We're getting there. Waking Nightmare, already a solid focus spell with its basically fear as a focus spell that can also make someone fleeing if they were asleep. Now paralyzes them instead of fleeing and adds 1 damage per rank on every strike while they're frightened. Perfected Form was renamed to Perfected Body. It now works on Clumsy, Doomed, Enfeebled, Poisoned, and Sickened, in addition to all of the things it worked on before, which were Polymorph, Morph, and Petrification. And it automatically works. It just, you don't re-roll. It's just like, no, your failure is a success. Your critical failure is a failure. Forced Quiet was changed to Whispering Quiet. Instead of making one creature have to be quiet, there's now an emanation that everything is like kind of quiet and only someone within 5 feet can hear it unless they beat your spell DC with their perception. So it's kind of like a silence, except for not quite silence. Safeguard Secret. This is also a really random change. The range of this spell, which is an out-of-combat spell that takes a while to cast, was increased from 10 feet to 30 feet. It affects allies. So I guess if you have a conspiracy of like 200 people that you need to keep your secret, you wouldn't have been able to fit them in a 10-foot range, and now you probably can in a 30-foot range. But otherwise, like, I guess why make the change, since that's another change people need to remember? It's good, and there's not definitely nothing wrong with it, though. It's a Positive Luminance was renamed to Vital Luminance because positive was removed. The emanation used to be 10 feet, increasing by 10 feet each turn. It is now a static 30 feet. Much better at first, but a nerf by the end when it would have gotten up to like 100 feet.
It was kind of overkill at that point.
It is really big at that point. Traveler's Transit was increased from a minute to 5 minutes. That seems legit. That seems good. Word of Truth. It adds a +2 to diplomacy, which is specifically because they can tell you're telling the truth. So the thing that's very weird about that to me is like that's actually really good, because otherwise, what's the like mechanical implication of telling the truth? If it was make an impression, but it's kind of weird that it adds a +2 to making a request, given the justification is they can tell you're telling the truth. Where like if I go in and I'm like, Derik, give me all of your money. And he was like, well, Mark, I can tell you're being honest that you want me to give me you all of my money. So, of course, if you were lying about that
your
request,
need must be very great.
Give me all of your money. I don't need it. I just want it. Oh, you should get a +2 for that because it's the truth. So it's a little weird stylistically. I really like the mechanical effect that was added overall, though. It maybe should be make an impression. Maybe it should add certain other skill checks that are like intimidate. You know they're telling the truth that they're going to kill you. Glimpse the Truth was made into an aura, and then it could remove the language about it moving along with you, which is it should have been in the first place. And now the Heightened 7th lets only those inside of the aura see through the illusions, not everybody in the world. Touch of Obedience is gained a 1-hour temporary immunity to prevent spamming, but it was drastically boosted in power. Success is now Stupefied 1 until the end of the next turn, your next turn instead of current turn. Failure is Stupefied 2 until end of next turn instead of Stupefied 1. And Crit Fail is Stupefied 2 for 1 minute and prone. And there's a 1 action. Now, the temp immunity doesn't mean you can't spam it a lot. Similarly, Commanding Lash adds insult to injury for your opponents by giving them a minus. It's the same as before, but they get where they you can command them as 1 action after you damage them. But it gives them a -2, which stacks with Frightened or Stupefied because it's circumstance, as Derik kept mentioning before, for being frightened or stupefied or having persistent damage. I feel like that's a little bit cruel to someone that you know already is frightened or stupefied.
Right.
I feel like if it was persistent damage, I'd be like, yeah, and maybe you also frightened or stupefied them, but persistent damage giving the penalty makes sense. But doing like, I know you have a penalty, so I'm going to give you penalty so you can have penalty with your penalty is really nasty.
Right.
They did add temp immunity 1 hour to prevent spamming.
Right. Running up the scoreboard, as we say.
Yes. Tidal Surge is old. The old critical failure effect is now the regular failure effect of moving 10 feet or 20 feet in water, but you can move a willing creature with no save. They just say, let me move you. I think that's really cool, and I love the willing creature change.
Yeah, that's cool.
Precious Metals has moved the heightened into the main text, which is a very one of the only times I've ever seen, like at 8th rank, this thing happens. And they did that to add a new heightened effect, which I find a little bit peculiar. The effect itself for a particular reason. It says if it has less than 10 hardness, its hardness is increased to 10 plus 2 per additional rank above 4th. So that means that it eventually goes up to 22. If it starts with 11, though, it doesn't go up at all. And I see why they did that, because if you had an adamantine item and you changed it to steel, it doesn't make sense that it made its hardness go up to 22. But stylistically, it's a little weird that it's also not explained why changing like cold iron into silver or something like that made it go up to 22. And so I feel like they might as well have just always made it go up to 22 if they were going to make it go up to 22. Obviously, this doesn't matter at all except for shields, and is quite good for shields because 22 is a lot. It's not that long a duration though, so it's not like it's a super powerful effect. It's just a little bit unusual. Last one, Weapon Surge. The damage at first rank was decreased usually to a D6. It used to be your weapon's damage die. Obviously, if you had a D4 weapon, that is an increase. But now it scales with rank up with heightened up to 3d6, which is certainly a lot more at higher levels. It's spirit damage, and it is sanctified, so it will apply holy or unholy. And that is all of the cleric changes.
Except for the stuff for the divine spell list.
But which is massive.
That could be anything. I will say, Mark, that, and this is what we were just talking about in chat. I said people could debate whether the remaster is really a 2.5 or not. And again, depending on how you want to view the scale of changes. But there can be no doubt that the cleric is 2.5, right? Like, and this is a lot of changes, not just to the core progression of the class. It's addition of new feats, it's changing of existing feats, sometimes minor changes, sometimes significant changes, mostly buffs, a couple of like walkbacks, changes to a wide array of focus spells, and certainly the divine spell list has some pretty substantial reworks and changes of certain spells. So, I mean, as a whole, if you're a cleric, you have a lot to absorb, and take in. Like, I'll give you a very minor example of like maybe a buff, but also maybe not a buff, but also where did the other spell go, right? Protection. The classic level 1 cleric spell, divine, I should say divine spell. It's 2 actions, you touch a target. Now, back in the day, in Pathfinder 2E, the original, when you cast protection, the alignment mattered. Okay. Yes. And of course, but now there is no more alignment in Pathfinder 2. So now protection spell, unlike before, which gave you a +1 status bonus to armor class and a +1 saving throws against creatures of the chosen alignment, it is now a +1 status bonus to armor class and saving throws against everything.
And it's common, which is just a huge...
And it's no longer uncommon. That's true.
It's a huge increase in defense because +1 is just a huge increase. Right. And
in fact, and for those of you who don't know, it is very hard in this game to find a status bonus to armor class that's greater than 1. There's a couple. Holy Aura is 1 at level 8, but it requires the cleric to keep sustaining it, and it's kind of a pain in the butt. So +1 AC is a lot, but not only that, protection, they got, I can't find it. They got rid of Circle of Protection. And the only reason why that kind of sucks is because Circle of Protection at level, rank 4, heightened in our original Pathfinder, lasted for an hour, which was a really cool, long-lasting defensive buff. That spell seemingly does no longer exist, but Protection, the level 1 spell, now heightens at 3rd to be a 10-foot emanation around your target.
For a minute.
But it's only a minute. So
which is much more fair, because getting +1 to AC and save
for an hour,
everything for an hour would be awesome on everybody in your emanation. Would be very, very strong at any level.
I think it'd be pretty awesome. All I'm saying is this is a complex change, right? You're removing one spell, you're changing this spell. It now applies to everything, but there's also no longer the weird edge case where it could be +3 bonus if it's a summoned creature, and it heightens. So and that's just changing one spell, that's just changing protection. So you can imagine that there is a ton of abilities. I mean, all in all, protection's a much more buff spell. But
there's a huge number of changes.
There is just there's just a large number of changes. Like I said, example, I thought remove curse, remove curse, remove disease, neutralize poison, or remove curse, cure disease, neutralize poison. We're all very pigeonholed spells. Guess what?
They're combined.
They're just one spell now. So
it's much easier to prepare it.
Much easier to prepare it. Much easier, because now you're like, I don't have to guess which affliction we're going to be attacked by. I cover them all, right? And that's really cool. That's
even though there are a huge number of changes, to be clear, most things didn't change. It's just that there's a lot of things in the books. Also, we're focusing on the classes where I would say a large number of the changes were in classes other than OGL related ones. Because obviously the OGL things changed, but other than that, most of the words that are in here and a lot of other stuff are exactly the same. Even some of these that I called out as changing, like 2 words or something changed in the feed, and I called it out.
Right. I will say you get the you get guilty by association, which is when there's this many small changes, you second guess pretty much everything.
Oh yeah.
Because you're going to go, oh, this spell, and you go, I'm not sure. Did they change a word? Did they change a trait? And you're going to find yourself constantly having to even though that feat didn't get changed, right? In theory, it's not part of the complexity. It will be, because you're going to go, I better double check what this actually does. Because
I do think you're right.
There were enough changes to make you doubt, if the thing that you think didn't change, whether it did or not. So
I also do have to admit that until I did this exercise where I forced myself to look for every small wording change in the Cleric, I thought there were fewer changes than there were, because a lot of them were not really major changes. And there were more than I thought in the Cleric. Obviously, the Bard was actually fewer than I thought there were going to be. So it definitely varies.
Right. All in all, I will say this. Cleric has definitely gone up a tier. I think because of all these changes. War Priest may have gone up a tier and a half. And I kind of questioned some of the validity of the War Priest, but there is a lot here now that really makes that a very fun and compelling playstyle choice, with a lot of the combination of the feats, the core progression, the changes to the spells, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Not to mention, the ability to sort of focus point spell spam. So yeah, I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah, Cleric is very, very strong now. It's already one of the strongest, and now it's even stronger. So it's doing great. You will not feel bad about bringing a Cleric into your group. I think you're going to feel really good. And
arguably, with the quote-unquote changes, but not really changes, apparently, just a clarification. This due to the death and dying rules, people are going to even be more like, I need a heal. But of course, it's interesting. We've had all these I'll tell you this.
You should get the healing dome, with the one with Rebuke Death, where you don't increase your wounded when you wake up.
Knights of Last Call has never played with that wounded rule. We played with the rule that was in the condition and the CRB, which was, when you go down, your dying is plus wounded, and if your dying would increase, it goes up by 1 or 2 if it was a critical effect. And it's weird to me that, apparently according to Reddit, it was 50-50. This means that for the last 4 years, it was
a third. Only a third knew, a third didn't know, but are changing it. A third are just like, die hard, we're not changing
But that means for 4 years, we as a community have been kind of missing the fact that a good percentage of us were not playing the game at what I would consider to be, it's not that it happens all the time, but it's a fairly important rule, right? Your death and dying rules.
It came up every once in a while. I saw it because of the fact that, I don't have any stake in the game for that one. I'm fine with either version of it, really. But I am the one who initially discovered that mistake was in the core rulebook, where one of the places where it said it did not say that it increases everywhere, because it was supposed to increase everywhere. Everybody on the design team knew that. That's why Logan put it into the Game Master screen. Yeah. It was literally a mistake that no designer is sure why it was in there, that it didn't. But I'm the one who found that out when someone was asking about it, because some of the places in the core rulebook, it still says that.
Right.
And they were like, it says that here. They didn't tell me about the place where it didn't say it. I was like, yeah, that's what it is. And they're like, aha, gotcha. But in this other place, it said that it doesn't increase. I was like, what? No, wait, I didn't even know that. And then people went online and were like, Mark Seifter is changing. This was years ago. Yeah. Mark Seifter is changing the rule to this thing. And I was like, what? No, I don't have any stake in this. This is just what we as the design team thought that the rule was, and we didn't know that it said.
The most important part of this is if you're dying and you get brought up, you're wounded 1. If you get dropped to dying again, not because of a crit, just because of drop to dying, you're going to dying 2. And if you take any damage, whether it's from persistent, whether it's from someone attacking you, or you fail that flat check, you die. I've been
playing that since before the game was out. And I have had no deaths in my game.
By the way,
well, your group is the super group, Mark.
I killed over 200 characters during my Rise of the Runelords game. If you don't count the Breath of Life raises as like being not a death.
Steven, please.
I was going to say at PaizoCon, I saw that was the very first thing I looked up in that 600-page rulebook is Death and Dying, and immediately said, hey, these two contradict each other, so I'm kind of surprised. Like, I found that in 5 minutes. Like, that was the very first thing I found. Because...
I have proof that Steven is telling the truth about that, I think, because I think he sent me a message on Discord all the way back. I didn't work for him. Then he was just like, Mark, I think these contradict. I'm running it on Roll for Combat. And I guess he didn't send it to me right away, or I would have known.
No, I sent it to people right away because I was like,
he sent it to me pretty quickly, though.
I was because think about it. It's like one of the first things you're going to look up is how combat works, especially if you're the GM. You know, if you're the players, you're going to look at the classes. If you're the GM, you're going to look at like combat rules, and that's what I looked at. And I was like, wait, how does this work? And actually, the other reason, I'll tell you why it happened, Mark. We were at it was at Gen Con. Remember, I was at Gen Con and I was running the whatever it was. There was a game at Gen Con for Pathfinder 2nd Edition, and it was myself and Param and Lauren and
it was at Gen Con. That explains it. I knew it wasn't at PaizoCon because I knew that
PaizoCon. It was. I think
you probably figured it out at PaizoCon, but I only got the message from you later on because
and then what ended up happening
first.
What happened is that there was a trap in the room, and the rule was it attacks whoever's left. And the only person left in that room was Param. And I rolled 3 d20s, and I got a 19, a 19, and a 19. And that was a crit, and a crit. And we're like, okay, I think you're dead. And then we looked up the death and dying rules, and then we're like, wait, there's 2 death and dying rules. What are we doing here? And that was right then and there, and we had to figure it out on the spot. And then I called over some people.
How did that not get fixed in errata? Right, there were 4
I put it in the errata queue, and then we discussed it as a design team. I was like, do we want to just change it to this thing that we type out in the one place? And people are like, no, let's keep the original. And then it just didn't get in.
Henry,
what happened?
Henry has a question. I just want to make sure that this is explained. So yes, okay. So the way that the death and dying rules work and have always worked is anytime your dying value would increase. This could be because you were conscious and you just fell unconscious. It could be because you just failed a flat dying save or dying check. It could be because you took damage while you were unconscious. All of these things cause your dying value to increase, typically by 1 or 2 if it was caused by a critical failure or critical effect. In any of these instances, if you have wounded 1, wounded 2, wounded 3,
you add wounded.
You add wounded X to how much your dying value increased. So the way that I and a lot of other people were playing it is when our dying value increased while we were already unconscious, we were not adding the wounded. We would add the wounded when you went from conscious to unconscious, aka if I was wounded 1 or wounded 2, let's say wounded 2, and I got knocked unconscious by a normal hit, I would go to dying 3. But then
one place in the core rulebook said to do it the way that you said, or it only told you to do that one. And there's another place that says, as a reminder, you should add it all the time. Then the beginner box
it's a mess.
And the GM screen and every other product that came after that clarified the original.
Do you know why I know it was in the beginner's box? Here's another crazy part. I got the beginner's box early, and I was editing something, and I copied and pasted the death and dying rules from the beginner's box PDF. Because I'm thinking, if anything is going to get these rules right, because I thought, okay, here we go. Here's the official rules. They didn't errata it. So let me go to the beginner's box because that's probably the correct rules. And then I copied and pasted it into whatever I was doing. And then I was like, wait, that looks wrong too. And then I'm like, oh my god, it's another sub. They didn't correct it. They made it worse. I couldn't believe it. It's like mind-boggling.
Yeah. So obviously, by and large, this is going to increase the lethality of your Pathfinder 2 game if you haven't been using that rule.
In our game, they all have regeneration anyhow, so they never die.
I don't know, like, it probably will. I think it's a fluke that I haven't had any kills yet in PF2, honestly, given how many I had in PF1.
And Die Hard, yeah. All my guys have Die Hard in regeneration, so they're fine. We got to go, though, because I got another stream.
Thanks for joining us, everybody. And
if we got to 100 likes, I
made Derek's thing, but we didn't make it there.
I typed it in. I didn't say anything, just to see people read the chat. 275 people. No one's reading chat because if we got 100 likes and we only needed a little bit more, we'd have Derik doing some Jean Valjean.
Maybe your chat just understands that they came here for Cleric talk, not for Broadway musical Derik.
I appreciate the fact that we had enough time to get through. I appreciate we made it through everything. It was very difficult.
All right, well, you have to go. So
yeah, you have to go. Thank you, and I want to thank Steven and Derik for bearing with me. I know I had to steamroll through quickly to get through that content because hopefully we will not have as strict of a time limit next time there's one that has this many changes.
Right.
Yeah, and so in less than 20 minutes, I'll be doing this again. So don't go anywhere.
Oh, we got over 100. Derik, what are you gonna have to do?
We're not going anywhere because it's just gonna be me and Professor Dungeon Master. But
okay, that means you and Professor Dungeon Master have to sing Les Mis when you start.
He can sing.
Yeah, I know. So have him sing Les Mis. Have Professor Dungeon Master sing Les Mis when the next one starts.
I'll see if he'll throw on the pipes. I can't sing.
Then they'll come from this stream to that stream. It'll be great.
And don't forget, look at those animated tokens. Look at those babies. They're so good.
I like the dog.
I know. I'm actually gonna have the dog taken out separately. So I'm gonna have the dog and I forgot which angel that is, but
I think it's the one that is known for having animal friends.
Right. I'm gonna have the dog and the angel.
Whichever
separate.
diva has animals a lot of the time, probably.
Yeah. So
awesome. Well, we can have it was kind of a whirlwind, but fun stream, guys.
Yeah,
and remember,
Derik, I was glad to have you on.
Steven, I really appreciated your input.
Oh, I know. Well, you guys were on.
Derik, this is the class I wanted to have you on for the most, and you happened to pick this day. So
I didn't want to. I didn't want to stream all over you. You had a lot of good thoughts, and I had nothing. Hey, man, yes, there can only be one Derik / Steven in a stream.
Yeah. So to sum up. The Cleric has, I think, a lot of changes. The War Priest got a number of cool buffs and boons. All of them did because of the changes to healing font. I really like the Sanctification rule. So does Mark. I think it's a fun way to engage with a sort of version of alignment that isn't alignment. And it has a fun mechanical and easily understandable mechanical effect. There are numerous changes to focus spells, cantrips, and regular spells. So you're going to have to pay attention to that. But in a lot of cases, these spells got more or got either stronger or more versatile, which is a form of strength. And then, of course, there's a lot of new feats, some updated feats, in some cases in like healing hands or whatever whatever the one is that changes
magic
hands. Who knows why they changed that? In other cases, though, mostly the feats were either awesome, broken, potentially new ones, or really cool updates and basically buffs too.
I like the flavor on all of the new ones, even if they had things with the rules that we talked about there a little. I don't know. I think this is really cool. Obviously, there's maybe a few things that my GM that I play with that is a little strict. I'm sure he's not going to allow Rage Simple. But I think we'll be able to get in a lot of these things.
That's legal. That's core.
No, Mark, you don't understand. I write these things for Paizo, and my GM has banned them from Secrets of Magic, from all sorts of things. I was like, I worked on it. I think it's fine. He's like, nah, we're not gonna. All
right, don't go anywhere. I'll be back in 15 minutes and wait to hear. Me and Professor Dungeon Master will be going through crazy stuff. And if you didn't hear me talk that last hour and a half,
you're gonna get it.
You're gonna get it and then some. You're gonna get it and then some. I was resting my voice that whole time.
And by the way, Valjean, at last we see each other plain, Monsieur Le Maire. You'll wear a different chain.
That was worth
that's
it.
good, Derik. But it would have been even more impressive if you had the phone go off at exactly the same time as
I think you did that on purpose. All right.
All right.
See ya. Bye.
Bye, everybody.